Hello, are you a young woman um, frightened of growing old and being on your own? Are you absolutely terrified of never being able to find a man? Of never being able to find a man? Mr. Right, you can't find him, and you'll end up old, on your own, and probably with cats. Lots of cats. And you're terrified. I remember thinking exactly that myself when I was in my 20s. And it's such a negative view of a woman who has become single, perhaps not through choice, or through choice, and is living on her own in middle-aged onwards. It's not very emancipated view, is it? It's not very liberating for a woman to think like this, that she should be terrified of being on her own in old age, because you never, never, never will hear any young man say he's frightened of being on his own in old age. Young women have this view that they're going to grow old, find a man, grow old with him. It's all going to be lovely, and they have the grandchildren. It's all lovey-dovey into the, 70s and 80s. But the reality is, I have to tell you that what you're hoping for and dreaming for and longing for, and your aspiration will very unlike and very rarely happens for people. The reality is most men die before women, and that's a fact. The fact is, you could find Mr. Right or Miss Right if you're gay, and the person can actually die before you, or they become sick. Cancer is very common, and they could also die before you. We know divorce, we know about divorce, but obviously you're not thinking that. You're thinking you're going to find Mr. Right, and that's not going to happen. We're not going to be divorced, right? But again, divorce is a possibility. Divorce is a possibility, right? However much you think it wouldn't happen, you will find Mr. Right, and we won't get divorced. Every couple that's got married has thought that we won't get divorced. People don't marry to get divorced. They don't marry to get divorced. They get to marry to they want to be together for forever after, and so on. They don't marry to think, oh well, in a year or two or 10 years we'll get divorced. No. So there's every likelihood and possibility that when you get past middle age, enter into middle age, once you get into 50s and onwards, you could find yourself on your own. And you've got, I think, need to reevaluate your attitude to being on your own as an old age pensioner. Right, I'm 62, right, and I've never been married, and I've never lived with a man, and I wouldn't, because I'm very independent. I think if you find somebody and it's a good marriage, a good partnership, I think you're very, very fortunate. I think you are very, very fortunate. But the reality is there's a lot of sorrow out there. There's a lot of women being abused by men, and psychologically and physically, and there's all sorts of terrible sorrow out there with the marriage and people in partnerships. It's not all rosy, and I, I think I'm in a good place. I think I'm in a good place. You see, whether you get married or whether you choose to remain single or you become single through circumstances, there are good things about it and there's negative things about it. And you have to decide if you like me, you're quite happy being single. Is 90 5% of the time, I'm quite happy being single and living on my own. I wouldn't want it any other way. Sometimes I think, oh, wouldn't it be nice, to have somebody? But that's only 5% of the time. The rest of the time, I'm quite happy. Equally, it's the same with the marrieds. They can be quite happily married, and they think that, and then every now and again, I think, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be single? Could just do what I want, I can just go out when I want, and no responsibilities and things like that. But there's it's no situation is perfect, but you have to decide on balance what you're happiest with, you see. And this percentage, looking at things from a percentage point of view, is a very good way of analysing your situation. If you are married, living with somebody, whatever, even if it's 80% of the time, you're quite, it's quite okay, or 75% of the time, you have to remember, is it worth giving up 75% for 25%? Because if you're going to be 25% happy single, then that means 75% of the time you're going to be lonely, right? Or hankering after somebody. You don't actually have to be lonely being on your own. A lot of it is getting used to being in your own company and being happy with it, right? Which all human beings should be able to do. And if you can do it for a short time, like if you can stay in one night on your own and you're happy and you're reading a magazine and you're having a bath and you're doing your hair and you're doing all sorts of things that women do and you're quite happy, you could be in all evening for 5 hours, 6 hours on your own. You're quite happy. You're not lonely. You watch television, whatever. You're quite happy. You're not unhappy. Now, all the difference between living on your own all the time is that time is extended. So instead of being on your own for 5 or 6 hours, you're on your own perhaps 12 hours or 15 hours. Or like me, because I'm not well and I'm housebound through illness, I'm on my own 24 hours a day. But it's about extending the time and getting used to it. When I first became sick, I found it very, very difficult because I wasn't able to go out. I was too ill. It was very hard, but eventually I got used to it, and I got used to being totally on my own and not feeling bad about it. So it is even possible for somebody, like I was used to living on my own, and perhaps used to had a social life, but when I became sick I couldn't go out. But even then I was able to adapt and get used to it and be quite happy in my own company. So if you can think of a time in the week when you are on your own and you're quite happy, you don't want anybody around, you're quite happy doing something or other, just think about being on your own in older age as that time extended, but you've got used to it and you're quite happy with it, and then the time is extended even more, and then you adjust to that and you'd be quite happy with that. So you can actually get used to it. Now, some people are more outgoing than other people, right? And they need more company. But again, a lot of it can be managed through having interests, right? Having an interest, developing interests and little hobbies, perhaps reading, even watching television, having a particular subject that you like watching about. You might like true crime, you might like reality programs, you might like sport, you might like history. So it's about having an interest in things. You might like gardening, right? Different things like that. You're cultivating little hobbies and interests that occupy you and that you actually enjoy. And you know what it's like as a single person. If you're doing something that you enjoy, whatever it is, you're staying in on your own, you're quite happy because you're absorbed in doing something, and you're quite happy. So I think what we're talking about here is adjustment and having a positive view, because this negative view of old age, and it's always directed with women. So this is not good. This is not liberating for women, where a young woman is terrified of being on her own in middle age and beyond. Right, you shouldn't be having this fear, because the reality is you can enjoy being on your own. It doesn't mean you won't have lonely moments, but it does mean that overall you can be quite content being on your own, and you can actually manage perhaps the loneliness, and maybe join things. You might want to join different groups or whatever as an older person to socialise, but it doesn't mean you are going to be desperately unhappy and miserable. Now, as for cats, right, it is very interesting that men don't get cats. Men that live on their own, the old bachelors, or some men that choose not to marry, yes, and then you've got a few men whose wives do die before them, right, and they're on their own in old age. They don't seem to be into cats. They seem to be into dogs. But unlike some women, they don't get loads of dogs. You'll never hear of this. You'll never hear, very rarely, an old man will get lots of dogs. What he'll do is have one dog, one faithful little dog, and it's with him, and it goes with him everywhere. And it's his little pal, right? But what can happen with some women, it's only a minority. This is only a minority of older women, is they get lots of cats. And why is this? I think one of the reasons is it's a mothering instinct in women. That there's something deep within a woman, that there's this mothering aspect, and she does like taking care. It's about taking care of something. Now, strictly speaking, if she's got one cat, you would think, well, that's enough for one woman. She's got one cat, she's got the cat to look after. Surely that should be enough for her. But she's getting more, and she's getting more. And I only began to understand this when I got a guinea pig, right? I have a guinea pig, right? I've been having guinea pigs for a number of years now. I've got this, so I have a guinea pig, and obviously because I've only got one and it's indoors, the guinea pig's getting lots of fuss and attention, as you can imagine. But the problem is I go on Facebook on all these groups, and they're advertising little baby guinea pigs that need a home. And I'm so tempted. Oh, isn't that lovely? I'd love that. Oh, isn't that lovely? I'd love that. I was very tempted to get another guinea pig. And then I was very aware of the cat thing, and I thought, look, I won't be able to stop here, because they're all so cute, all these little baby guinea pigs. And I could end up like a cat woman, but with guinea pigs. I could end up with loads of guinea pigs. Loads of them. Because they are all so cute. But I think the reason was this, I was getting like this, is it's the mothering instinct probably. And I think women tend to think with their hearts and not with their heads often. And we it's a bit like the sales. Oh, another white t-shirt. Well, it always comes in handy, another white t-shirt, another white blouse, another black skirt. I don't think we're always as sensible as men when we go shopping. I don't think we are. I think we talk ourselves into justifying buying the extra shirt and the extra dress, which we don't need. Another pair of shoes. Another pair of shoes. Another pair of earrings. We just keep buying and buying. Oh, that's lovely, that's lovely. And I think this can move into animals, and I had to get a grip with myself and say, one guinea pig is enough for me. One guinea pig is enough for me. The practicalities, I won't be able to cope with more than one because I'm not well. It's hard enough looking after myself and just one guinea pig without having a whole realm of them. But this is only a very small minority of single women, older single women living on their own who get lots of cats. And this is about the mothering thing and probably not thinking things through. They're not thinking things through. They're just following the emotions, and they're seeing this cat, this little kitten, and they go, ah, and they buy it, and then they see another one, they say, oh, and then they buy that, and then they buy. It's very easy because I still look on. I don't go to Facebook. I don't go in a pet shop because of this. If I see baby guinea pigs there in the corner, no, it's just because they are so cute. You can end up just buying them and buying them. And well, some people might say it's trying to fill a vacuum in their life, right? Now, there might actually be true. There might be some truth in trying to fill a vacuum in your life, in getting wanting all these guinea pigs. But even so, if there is a vacuum in your life, you can still control it. We do have self-control as human beings, and we can exercise it. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, but it's so hard. It's so hard. Well, yes, of course it's hard. But again, it's something you can do. And like, I have to discipline myself, and I see a little cute baby guinea pig on Facebook that needs a home, right, desperately. And I say, no, I'm not doing it because this will just get out of hand. And I wouldn't be able to cope with looking after it. I wouldn't be able to cope. And just like this minority of older women that get lots of cats, they can't cope. They can't cope, so the animals get neglected. And it's because they can't cope. They can't cope with it. It's too much to cope with. So you have to use your noggin. You have to use your noggin. But you see, this is only 0.5% of single women over 50, say, who are living on their own, whether through divorce, whether through bereavement, whether through choice, whether, it's not their choice, it's just the way life has worked out, they're on their own. You can control your circumstances. You don't have to become a cat woman. You don't have to become a cat woman. Those cat women didn't have to become cat women. They could have exercised self-control and just say, I'm just getting one. Or I'm just getting two. Or like me, I'm just getting one guinea pig, or I'm just getting two. You can exercise self-control and say, no, I'm not going to get loads of guinea pigs. And life is what you make of it. Life is what you make of it. I mean, there are so many women over 70 that lead such active social lives, far more active than many young people. Every day they're doing something. They are busy. They're busy little bees. And that comes from when they were younger, because when they were younger, they were probably very, very busy and active. If you're very busy and active and outgoing when you're young, you will be like that when you're 70. You won't change. You will be the same. And even if you're housebound through sickness or disability, if you are naturally outgoing person, you will still be a busy bee. You'll probably be busy on the internet, setting up some group and running it online, busy talking to people online, having people ringing you up and all sorts. So you will be a busy little bee when you're 70 or 80 online, even if you're housebound and you can't go out. Right? If you're younger and you're more introspective and introverted, it's probably when you get to 70 and onwards, you will possibly be more on your own. But again, that will be a natural for you because that's how you've always been. You're quite happy staying in, reading a book. I love staying in, reading a book. I would rather stay in and read a book than go to a party. I'd rather stay in and read a book than go to the pub or bar or nightclub. It doesn't mean that if I went, I wouldn't enjoy it, but I have no desire to be going to a bar or a nightclub regularly. If I went one off once a year, I'd probably say, well, this is quite nice, it's certainly different. But I wouldn't want to be doing it all the time. I'm quite happy sitting at home reading a book or watching some documentary, or I've got tapestry, I love doing tapestry. You know, I have lots of different interests. And so I think one important thing is to realise that it's your perspective and how you're looking at things, and being on your own doesn't mean you're lonely. How many times have you been somewhere socially and you felt lonely, you felt a bit lonely? Maybe you haven't fitted in. Maybe people aren't interested in talking to you. It could be any number of reasons, and you just suddenly feel a bit lonely and you're not enjoying it, and there's people all around you. And yet at another time you could be staying in of your own choice of an evening, and you could be doing any number of things and you're quite happy on your own. And you always have to get things in perspective. When I do get moments of feeling a bit sad and a bit, would it be nice to have some company, I do have to remind myself that 95% of the time I am quite happy being on my own, and I just have to ignore these feelings, this 5%, and just carry on as usual, doing with my normal routine. And the fact is, the matter is that I do like my own company, and there's nothing wrong with liking your own company. It is not selfish to enjoy being on your own, reading or doing any other activity. It is not a sin. And because Christianity can very much give the impression that if you like sitting in on your own doing something, that you're a selfish person. Because I had a lot of that said to me when I was an evangelical Christian, that somehow the culture seems to think if you're on your own, staying in, you live on your own, you're a selfish person. But no, that doesn't mean you're a selfish person. It doesn't mean you're a selfish person. Just because you're on your own reading a book one evening, it doesn't mean you're a selfish person. It doesn't mean that you enjoy your company full stop, that you're a selfish person. I give to charity. I give from my income to charity. I do things, but everything's under the radar. Nobody knows. All the things that I do, nobody knows. I just get on with things quietly, and do and try and do good in my life. But I don't tell anybody. Don't make a big to-do about it. Right? Nobody knows. Nobody knows that I give to charity. Right? Except even the charities might not know. You know, that you might do it anonymously. Things like that. So it doesn't mean you're a selfish person. It doesn't mean that. I'm on my own every Christmas, and I'm quite happy on my own at Christmas. All the holidays I'm on my own, but I'm used to it now. It doesn't bother me. You know, you can adapt to it, and you can be quite happy with it. You don't have to be on your own at the holidays. But I choose to be on my own at the holidays. I actually prefer it. I love peace and quiet and solitude. I'd be quite happy on a desert island. Really, I would be quite happy on a desert island. And that is me. And I think I've always been like that. I've always, even as a child, was always looking for quiet places, solitary places. I didn't seem to like noise and hustle and bustle. I was always looking for quiet places. Of course, you have to be very careful because that can be dangerous places. Quiet places, isolated places can be dangerous places, and that's something else you have to think about, of not keeping yourself safe as a single person when you're out and about, not going anywhere too solitary, which I've learnt. It's a wonder I'm still alive, because I was always going to solitary places when I was younger. I didn't realise that going to solitary places all the time is quite dangerous. So it's amazing I'm still alive, but so I don't do that now. But I always like peace and quiet and solitude and reflection. And one of the things I've done also throughout my life is write and have things published, right? And so my way of giving back to the world, if you want to use that expression, is probably through writing and through my hobbies and through doing things online and also giving things financially. So the way I give back to the world is indirect, right? It's not through going out and about meeting people and giving back to the world. My way of giving back to the world is really, I suppose, through the internet. Through the internet, I've been able to give back to the world in different ways, right? And that can be the same for you when you get old and you become an old lady. If you are an old lady on your own, that you could end up leading a very active social life online. You might have multiple sclerosis. You might be very rarely be able to get out and about, because you do have to come to terms with being on your own, even if you do have a social life when you get older and living on your own. But you can be quite busy online. You've got the telephone, people can ring you. You'll have people can ring you, you can ring them. So even if you do need people, you can redirect it through online. And so what I'm showing you is there's different ways of coping with being on your own when you're an older person. And it doesn't have to mean that you're feeling sad all the time. It doesn't mean that you don't have to be feeling sad all the time. You might be feeling sad some of the time, but then you have to think about, how am I going to tackle this? Sometimes it can just be mental attitude. Sometimes it's about sorting yourself up here and getting your attitude right. You know, so, and it's all to do with perspective. It is interesting that all the negativity about being on your own as an older person is always about women. It's never about men. But even men can have hobbies and interests. I see an elderly gentleman, and every day he goes to the library. Every day he goes to the library. Every day he gets up early and he goes and gets a newspaper. He goes to the shops and different things. He gets his shopping early. 8 a.m. he's at the shops every day. He has a routine. And he's on his own, and every day he goes to the library. He's obviously, he's a great reader. And so he's organising his life. And this is it. If you go to the supermarket first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock, you will find it mostly full of widows. Older women there, they have a routine. They go there first thing in the morning and they get everything fresh. They do the shopping. Every day they're doing something. They're going to the shops. Every day they're going out, getting fresh air. They take an interest. They're going around the supermarket, chat to people and things like that. They divide their housework. Every day they have different things to do. They might join different clubs. They might go somewhere in the middle of the week, a luncheon club. They might go to some reading club or some discussion club. All these different things they have for older people. In other words, they make a life for themselves. And just as a single person, you have to make a life for yourself. And it is not always easy, is it? You have to find things and groups, and you arrive in a city with a new job, and you've got to try and make friends. It's the same with older people. They have to do the same things. Women in the 60s and 70s, they have to do the same things. They have to join things. They might do voluntary work. A lot of older women do voluntary work. And men, a lot of older men do voluntary work. Yesterday, my prescription was delivered by an elderly man. He must have been in his 70s, probably about 76. So he's working part-time, delivering prescriptions for a chemist, right? For a pharmacy, right? So that's his way of dealing with old age. I don't know if he's married or not. I don't know anything about him, but he is organising his life and managing it. Whether it's through financial necessity he's doing that job, or whether it's because he just doesn't like being on his own and he wants to do something and he's bored or whatever. In other words, older people and older single people, women like me, have to find ways of coping and organising their lives and making the best of things. And I don't think my life is any worse than somebody who's married. You know, as I said at the beginning, if you have a good marriage, you're very fortunate. But so many women are very unhappy in their marriages, and they just stay in their marriages for any number of reasons. And one of them is they just don't want to be on their own. They don't want to be on their own. They're terrified of being on their own. If you are not used to being on your own and you've always had somebody around, it will feel very, very strange and alien. It will feel strange and alien, but you can get used to it. It's a bit like having a new hairstyle. It's like you can get used to it. You get used to it. You can get used to it. It does take time. It does take time. I remember an elderly lady who was fiercely independent, and in the end she had to go to an old people's home. She couldn't cope on her own, and she resisted and she resisted, but in the end she had no choice. And then a year after living in the old people's home, one day she turned to me, she said, "You know, I'm so happy here," she said. "I would never have believed it." She said, "It's lovely." She said, "I've got my own room. I've got a lovely view from a window of a garden. The staff here are so kind. I've got a nice neighbour next door I can have a chat with." She said, "It's lovely." She said, "I'm really very, very happy." And she said, "I would never have believed it because I just didn't envisage that life could be like this, you know, in an old people's home." So she actually ended her days very, very happily. And this was a very fiercely independent woman, who did not want to give up her independence to go into an old people's home. And she actually died very, very happy in that old people's home. She had a privacy in her own room with her own little interests, because she did have interests, you know, television programs and reading and different things. But she also had people around if and when she wanted to have a chat. So growing old is what you make of it, and what you make of it is to do with what's here and reevaluating your attitudes, and that you might end up on your own with no cats, or one cat, or a guinea pig, or a dog, right? Or no pets. You could end up with a very busy social life at 75. Very, very busy. You could be on the internet running some route, running this, running that. You could be making waves. You could be working in a charity shops. You could be involved in politics. You could be involved in all sorts of things at 75. You don't know. And life is what you make it. And so you can look forward to old age. You might have a lot of health problems, you might not, but even then you have to make the best of things, because this is what life is all about. You have to make the best of things. Because just as you can become sick when you're young, you can become very sick when you're young. You can become sick when you're older. Equally, you could be in the best of health when you're 75 or 80. So don't make assumptions. That's the thing, is don't make assumptions, and resolve that the way you're living your life now is you could be leading the same kind of life when you're 50 or 60 or 70 with slight adjustments. And I think one tip I would give you is to have hobbies and interests. Ask yourself, do you have hobbies and interests? Are you open to new hobbies and interests? Because what you find with older people is they develop new interests. I developed a new interest in art. I developed a new interest in gardening when I got to my 50s. So there are some people when they get to the 50s and 60s who go to university, who do courses online, who do courses at home. So there's endless possibilities. And so I would ask you to look at older people that you see around you and notice how they're living. Look for the things that you can learn from. Look at that lady in the charity shop volunteering every week. She's doing something with her life. She's doing something with her life. And quite honestly, do you know, all these charity shops, without all these old ladies, they'd have to close down. All these charity shops that you see are run by older women. They're all run by older women, and without them, they wouldn't be able to function. And they are a strong army. So I hope this video has been helpful and helped you to think through being single and being older and being on your own.